Hello, my name is Isaac Randall. Today we're going to be talking about an emergency approach and landing. Now, a few disclaimers before we begin. These are using the checklists I trained for in a PA-28-161 aircraft. That is a Piper Warrior 3. Alright, let's switch over to the slides here. Alright, as I said before, emergency approach and landing. That's what we're going over today. You may be asking yourself, what is the objective of an emergency approach to landing? Well, you want to recognize and respond to an engine failure at altitude. Could be any altitude that you're training at. You want to select a plan for a safe landing area. That's key right there. If it's an unsafe landing condition, your emergency landing isn't going to really turn out too well. Then, of course, managing the airplane's energy and configuration for a successful touchdown. You never know what's going to happen out there. Maybe you have a really strong headwind, and it might be not the best idea to configure your airplane at 40 degrees of flaps that day, because you might sink before your landing point. Immediate actions. So what do you do after you get an engine failure? Well, A, B, C, D, E. A is going to be your airspeed. That's, for us, 73. That's going to buy you the most time and distance. Now, what's B? That's going to be the best place to land. So it could be a field, a road, a beach, whatever's the safest place to really land at that time. And then, of course, if you know the wind direction, awesome. Make sure that you're landing in the downwind. You don't want to land with a tailwind. That can be unsafe. C is going to be your checklists. So, as you can see on screen, I have the engine power loss in-flight checklist for a PA-28-161. This is what I trained with and what I have memorized. So you're going to want to switch to a tank containing fuel. Your electric fuel pump's going to want to go on. Your mixture is going to be full rich, carburetor heat on, and you're going to look at your engine gauges and just check to see if you have an indication of what made you lose the power, right? If no fuel pressure is indicated, make sure that you check your tank selector position, make sure it's on a tank containing fuel, and let's say you restore power, right? And your carburetor heat's going to go off and your electric fuel pump is going to go off. I personally suggest turning off one, wait a minute, and then turn off the other, because if one of those shuts off your engine again, you know what you have a problem with. All right, let's talk about D. That is declare. So you're gonna 121.5 on your radio. Mayday, mayday, mayday. So and so. Loss of engine power. 2 souls on board. And then you're gonna give them your location. Maybe you're 10 nautical miles south of the airport, and you are going to be landing on a field. Just make sure that you give them information to be able to find you as well. And then, of course, you're going to want to squawk 7700. That's always very important. And if you are in a towered area, or you're just near the airport, you could also tell ATC, because they'll gladly be able to help you out too. All right, so E is going to be execute. There you are. You've already found your spot. You're coming in to land. Looks like that you can configure the aircraft. You've gotten your power off checklist going. You've already told them about your whereabouts. Going to land. Awesome. What's the last thing to do? Well, you want to secure your aircraft once you actually have landed. And depending on your aircraft, it could be different per the POH. All right. Airspeed and glide concepts. So, best glide speed is the maximum distance over the ground that you could cover. While the wind could affect you as a headwind, you'd have a shorter ground distance. With a tailwind, that distance would go longer. Now, what is the glide distance? So, it just depends on where you are altitude-wise. If we look at this example, at 10,000 feet, we would be getting about maybe 14.2 nautical miles of distance before we reach the ground. But this example is pulled from not the POH that we use. So we would want to go into our POH and use our own graphs to get this distance. Weather and conditions. So with a high density altitude, we could have reduced climb and glide performance, but if it's also a low density altitude, we could have increased climb and glide performance. It just depends on the day. Now, if you look down at our example here, you can see density altitude. The lower it is, the more compact our air molecules are. And then the warmer it is, the more expanded apart they are. So we'll get less performance then. Turbulence. It's hard to hold a stable approach with turbulence. Of course, you're getting bumped around all over the place. So it's going to be harder to hold a stable approach, but we need to do our best to correct for it. Visibility. Now let's say we're going out on a marginal VFR day, right? So the visibility is a bit lower than normal. That could affect how soon we could find our best place to land. Now, what would be the best scenario there is we need to glide for a little bit and hopefully get something in sight. If not, we need to choose something that we could see below us. And there's an example right there as well of someone doing an approach in, but as you can see with the low visibility, they're only able to see the approach lights. Stabilized approach and energy management. First off, you're going to want to aim at a point. So when we're going in to pick a point to land, we're going to want to look at that point, and just like we see in this photo right here, we're going to want to slowly glide to said point. Next off, you're going to want to think about configuring your aircraft. Now, the reason why we say think about here instead of configure your aircraft is because what if it's a high wind day? You have a massive headwind, right? Maybe flaps aren't the best idea. If you put in too many flaps, then you're going to sink real quick. Now, gear, if retractable, it's a good idea to put it down once you're at 1,000 feet, because you want to give it ample time to drop so that way you know it's locked into place before you end up hitting that ground. Now, this is something I have been known to accidentally do once in a while when I was first as a PPL, was avoiding last second changes. Now, once you pick a spot, you want to stick to that spot, all right? You don't want to change your landing point last second because you could miss that landing point, or you could do a turn that might make you lose a bunch of ground. Now, managing your energy. Altitude plus airspeed plus your configuration here, right? So with altitude, it's like, in our example, we've been using 2,500, right? So that's going to give you ample distance to get down, do your checklist, get your best place, get your best airspeed. Best airspeed. If you don't have your best airspeed there, your altitude's not going to really matter too much because you're just going to be sinking a lot faster. So we need to hold our best airspeed. So now we have altitude plus our airspeed. Now we're going to add our configuration in, right? We're getting closer to our point, meaning we should probably start thinking about adding in our flaps. Or we're at 1,000 feet about to go below. We should also think about lowering our gear if we have retractable gear. And that is how you get your altitude plus airspeed plus configuration. They all kind of go hand in hand with each other. Awesome. Now let's talk about your emergency location and communication, right? So what you're looking at here is an image of a ELT. Now, what is an ELT? That's an emergency location transmitter. Now, it activates automatically on impact, but if we have an actual engine failure, we're going to swap it to the on switch. Now, some other devices that we have is a personal locator beacon, or ADS-B tracking, or a cell-based app, of course. Any of those could help emergency services locate us once we are on the ground. Now, when it comes to ATC help, and you're near an airport, let's say you lose your engine then, right? Well, instead of switching to the 121.5, just hop on ATC and say, Mayday, 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 I have an engine failure. And they're going to give you priority. Now, what's giving you priority? they're going to be clearing out everyone else of their airspace so that way you can land at said airport without the risk of worrying about anyone else. Now, if you are in like a sticky area or a sticky situation, they might give you some guidance, but ultimately, if you need to make a decision there, you're the PIC of the aircraft, make that decision to land. All right, now let's talk about some risk management. What are some risks that might come with doing an emergency approach to landing? Well, you have to worry about your terrain and obstacles. If we're going near a road, there might be wires. If we're out in the field, there could be trees. There also could be trees near a road, or there could be buildings out there. You never know what terrain and obstacles might be around, so make sure that you pay attention to those. Flight path discipline is also something. We kind of talked about this earlier a little bit, but once you pick a point, stick to that plan. Collision hazards. Watch out for other low-flying aircraft. Now, as we're going down, we're going to be on frequency saying Mayday, Mayday, Mayday to 121.5. So other aircraft in the area might not hear us unless they are also on said emergency frequency. So we just need to be paying attention to that. And then if there looks like that there is someone hanging out below us, but we have no engine, being able to swap over to our practice area frequency and just really quickly say, Mayday, Mayday, watch out below, we don't have an engine. Low altitude risks. Now, there are a bunch of risks with low altitude, but the main ones we're looking at are stalls, spins, and controlled flight into terrain. Now, a stall can be as simple as you're approaching your point and you think you're not going to make it, so you pitch up a little bit too much and you lose all the speed and we stall. Now, we don't want to do that. We want to be holding our best glide speed almost the entire time to our point. So, as long as you're holding that, we should be all good. And then controlled flight into terrain, as long as we know and we acknowledge our terrain and obstacles around us, we should be fine there. Now, of course, distractions. You're going to want to stay focused while you're gliding the aircraft down to our point. Let's say your iPad drops on the floor, or your phone drops on the floor, your pen drops. You just want to ignore it, focus on flying the aircraft first. Awesome. Now, what are some skills to practice and some ACS standards here? We're going to want to hold our best glide, which is plus or minus 10 knots. We're going to want to configure per the POH, select the best landing area, plan and fly the approach, prepare for touchdown, complete appropriate checklists, and correct any errors we might come across. Now, here's some common mistakes to avoid. Delaying pitch for glide speed. I personally also struggled with this one at first, but if you're able to get pitch for that glide speed right off the bat, it's going to make your emergency approach so much easier. The next one here is picking a poor landing site. Maybe you pick a landing site and it's a field, and then you get closer, and then you notice it's like a rice field. That's a pretty poor landing site right there because it's mainly water, and we could hydroplane very, very easily on that, or we could get our front wheel caught and flip. All right, forgetting to secure the engine. When emergency services get there, the aircraft could be a danger to them as well. So we want to make sure that we secure that engine. Now, configuring too late is another thing too. So putting your flaps in too late, you might already be too high, floating past your point. If it looks like that you're going to float past your point, put those flaps in. If it still looks like it, make sure that you slip. Getting distracted and losing situational awareness. As we kind of talked about earlier, if there's any distractions going on, maybe a bird flies right above us, just try your best to ignore it and keep flying the aircraft down to our approach point. Try to avoid those common mistakes, and your emergency approach to land is going to look golden. All right, now to kind of wrap it up, as we kind of see in this image here, prioritize. Fly the airplane first. As we all know, aviate, navigate, communicate. plan. You're going to want to pick the best spot and you're just going to stick to it. Prepare. Configure early and manage your energy. If you configure a little bit early, awesome. If you know that you're going to make it, that's great. Communicate. Let someone know you're in trouble. ATC 1 to 1.5, other aircraft in the practice area. Just let people know that you are in trouble. All right. And again, my name was Isaac Randall, and this was my emergency approach to land.